Hello and welcome to In Conversation with WLV Doctoral College. I'm Dr. Deborah Curitan and I work in research and development at the University of Wolverhampton.
I'm Dr. Ben Halligan, I'm Director of the Doctoral College.
Today's In Conversation with WLV Doctoral College is about the discussion chapter of your thesis. So Ben, what's really important aspects of that go into the discussion chapter?
So this is after the results are in. So a previous section might look at the data that you've generated, and now it's the time to begin to analyse that information, the data. And I suppose really in a way, the first step would be to return to the original questions of the thesis, would you say?
Well, I think it's really important in your discussion section to ensure that you let the examiner know, or the examiners know, that you've answered your research questions and how. I think it's also important in that chapter to talk about the contribution to knowledge you make.
So you're actually flagging up stuff that you may otherwise assume that the examiners may surmise. But I think that assumption is problematic and could be counterproductive. I think there's nothing wrong with saying, so the data proves the thesis that I've outlined in my chapter 1, which is this, and we can see therefore a direct validation of. So in a way there could be some repetition, but it's repetition that's validated by the results that you've generated.
There was a piece of research that was done by Vernon Trafford that actually looked at the final chapters of doctoral theses, and that assumption that the examiners should know that you've answered your research questions, and in particular this piece of research focused on contribution to knowledge, the assumption that your examiners should know the contribution to knowledge that you make. And most of the theses actually didn't explicitly outline the contribution to knowledge made, and the recommendations from that piece of research is that it's really important to make sure that you explicitly state these things.
I mean, I'm always saying that to students, that you can't allow modesty to get in the way. I mean, if you've proven something and you're the first person to have proven that, you should say, and so for the first time in this disciplinary field, we can confirm that X, Y, Z, whatever it is that you've done. I suppose the other interesting element of the results section could be how you talk about aberrant results. Maybe there was data that you were not expecting, and therefore you reran various experiments. Maybe that happened successfully, maybe not. Maybe it's a matter of saying that there were variables that were beyond the control of the experimentation, but this didn't necessarily impact on the search to answer the questions. Or maybe it throws up new areas of possible research for the next researcher going forward.
Well, you would hope that would be the case, because what you don't want is researching into a dead end, really. Our research is supposed to open up further questions. Talking about questions though, we've talked about answering questions in all of your chapters. Each chapter has a question that you're answering, and in the discussion the most important question that you're answering is the so what question. So your results have told the world what you found. Your discussion tells the world why that's important. So it's going to be, why is that important on a number of different levels? So it's, why is it important to you as a researcher? Why is that important to the field? Why is that important on an academic level? Why is that important on a practice level? And then you should also ask yourself the question again, so what? And keep asking that so what question until you've got to the point of you can't answer it, so that you've run out of answers to the so what. Because it's important to tell the world the impact that your work is making.
And it can be, if somebody keeps saying to you, and the relevance of that is, and the importance of that is, it's actually quite a good discipline, because it really pushes you to interrogate what may be still slightly vague ideas as the
Yeah.
importance of what you've done and why.
Yeah.
So I think that's just great advice, definitely.
The discussion section should be, there's an argument that it should be tailored to the literature review, that those two sections should really match each other. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's somewhat disciplinary specific, but I think that in terms of framing what you have discovered or found or proven as new or path-breaking or revises certain old ideas, you would then need to return to those old ideas, which we would find maybe in the literature review. Or conversely, it may confirm or give a stronger confirmation of something that had been suspected, that had been presented as correct, but we needed stronger evidence to present that as correct. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that it can overcome a tendency you get in some PhD theses to complete the literature review and then just leave it, just dump it there and never refer back to it. So I think a researcher will be definitely wise to follow that advice.
So it's about going back to that literature and seeing what your work adds to those arguments, how your work counters those arguments, enhances those arguments, or it just gives a different perspective to those arguments.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I suppose the other element of the section can be a bit of a summary, because it could be that in generating various data sets, you're kind of summarizing as you go along. So the first set, doesn't prove something, the second set doesn't prove, the third does, the fourth does. So it may be that you're saying that after each set, so that in the results discussion section, you can then go back and summarize and say, well, as noted, the first set didn't prove this, therefore it became necessary to adjust the parameters of the experiment to move to a second set. So it can be, a fairly straightforward thing to piece together, I would say.
I think one of the important sections of the discussion is around situating your work in the wider field. So we've talked about how your work counters or supports various arguments, but I think it's really important to talk about those processes and what that actually means for the wider field, because that starts to set up the recommendations that you'll make for future research, for future practitioners, for other people working in this field, for policymakers. So I think that is really important.
I mean, often it can be, to return to the literature review, it can be a revision of various underlying assumptions in the wider field. So in respect of revising them and offering further nuance or contradicting them or saying, in fact, it's more this rather than what people have previously thought, it does suggest that you can potentially consider the utilization of those results, which is the function of the section, for the discipline itself, but I guess even beyond, as you said, policy, things like that, even beyond the discipline, how these things would be useful. So that could be a bit speculative.
Yeah.
And it could go in the discussion bit, perhaps it could leak over into the conclusion. I guess it depends what kind of wider application one is thinking about,
I think it's an important stepping stone, particularly to the conclusions and the recommendations. I do think they should be standalone sections.
Or even a section which is, just simply identifies possibilities for further work, or a section that could be, advice for policymakers and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. So, top tips for the discussion section?
I would say don't be scared of piecing together a summary of comments that have already been made, but in doing this you're beginning to tell the story of the research, of the results and where we've actually gotten to now that the field work, the experimentation is finished.
Okay. And mine would be about making sure that you explicitly make it clear how you've answered your research questions and the contribution that you're making to knowledge. And if you want to be really savvy, you might want to look at one of Vernon Trafford and Shoshi Lesham's books that's called Stepping Stones to Your Doctorate. And in there they've got, I think, about 6 different definitions of how we make a contribution to knowledge in doctoral work. So not only tell your examiners what contribution to knowledge you've made, but how you've made that contribution to knowledge.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you for listening, and as always, if you want to hear more from us, do follow our channel and press the subscribe button to hear from us when we release new vlogs. We release new vlogs every Friday, usually, and we're always really interested to know what you want us to talk about. So if you've got any ideas for vlogs, please put them into the comments section below. So thank you for listening, and we look forward to speaking to you again. Bye.
Bye.